On January 29, 2026, the California Assembly pushed through AB 1421, a bill that keeps alive the state's plan to charge you for every single mile you drive. Right now, it's sitting in the Senate Rules Committee, and most Californians have no idea this is happening. The bill extends a study that could replace your gas tax with a mileage fee by 2027. We're talking potentially $420 to $1,350 per car per year on top of the taxes you already pay. This isn't theory anymore. The clock is ticking and the vote is coming. Look, if you're tired of Sacramento politicians making decisions about your wallet behind closed doors while other channels just repeat press releases without actually reading the bills, you're in the right place. I'm going to walk you through exactly what AB 1421 does, who's pushing it, and what it means for your family's budget. And if this kind of straight talk about California politics is what you need more of, hit that like button and subscribe, because we're tracking every vote, every committee hearing, and every backroom deal that affects your life. No fluff, no spin, just the legislative truth. Now let's get into this. A B 1421 is being sold to you as a harmless study. Just research, just planning, nothing to worry about. But here's what no one else is telling you. This study is the foundation for a complete transformation of how you pay for roads in California. And once that foundation is built, the actual tax that comes next won't need much debate because all the hard work, the technology testing, the cost projections, the legal framework will already be done. This is how policy works in Sacramento. You don't pass a massive new tax in one bill. You pass it in stages. First, you fund a study. Then you run a pilot program. Then you publish a report. Then you cite that report as justification for the tax itself. And by the time average Californians realize what's happening, the infrastructure is already in place and the votes are already lined up. Let me break down what AB 1421 actually does in plain language. The bill extends something called the Road Usage Charge Technical Advisory Committee. That committee exists for one purpose: to figure out how to charge California drivers based on the number of miles they drive instead of the amount of gas they buy. The committee has been studying this for years, and they ran a real pilot program from August 2024 to January 2025, where actual California drivers volunteered to have their mileage tracked using GPS devices and smartphone apps. The pilot program tested different technologies, it tested different fee rates, it tested public reaction, and now the committee needs more time to compile all that data and make recommendations to the legislature. A B 1421 gives them that time. It extends their work all the way through 2035 and requires them to deliver a comprehensive report by January 1st, 2027. That report is the key, because once that report is published, it becomes the official blueprint. It will include recommended fee rates, it will include recommended tracking technologies, it will include legal language for how to implement the system. And when a legislator introduces the actual mileage tax bill in 2027 or 2028, they'll point to that report and say, "We're just following the expert recommendations. This was studied thoroughly. This is based on data, and the public won't have time to mobilize opposition because the framework will already be built." Now let's talk about why this is even happening. Why is California considering such a radical change to transportation funding? The answer is electric vehicles. California has been pushing electric vehicle adoption harder than any other state. Tax credits, charging station subsidies, regulations requiring automakers to sell more EVs every year, and it's working. California has the highest electric vehicle ownership rate in the country. But here's the problem Sacramento didn't think through. Electric vehicles don't use gasoline. And if you don't buy gasoline, you don't pay the gas tax. California's gas tax is 68 cents per gallon, highest in the nation. And that tax generates billions of dollars every year for road maintenance, highway construction, and transportation projects. As more drivers switch to electric vehicles, that revenue stream is disappearing. The state's own projections estimate they will lose $31.3 billion in gas tax revenue over the next decade. $31.3 billion. That's not a small hole in the budget. That's a catastrophic collapse of the primary funding source for California's transportation infrastructure. So Sacramento has a choice. They can either cut transportation spending by $31 billion, or they can find a new way to collect that money. And cutting spending is not going to happen. Union contracts for road construction workers are locked in. Federal matching funds require the state to maintain certain spending levels. Maintenance backlogs are already massive. California's roads are rated some of the worst in the country, so cutting isn't an option, which means new revenue is the only option. And that's where the mileage fee comes in. If you charge every driver in California based on how many miles they drive, you can replace the revenue lost from declining gas tax collections. Electric vehicle owners would finally pay their fair share for road use. Gas-powered vehicle owners would pay based on actual road wear instead of fuel consumption. And from Sacramento's perspective, it's a more stable and predictable revenue stream because miles driven don't fluctuate as much as gas prices or fuel efficiency. But here's the part they're not saying out loud. Nothing in AB 1421 requires eliminating the gas tax if mileage fees are implemented. Nothing. The bill is about studying how to create a mileage-based system. It doesn't say that system has to replace the gas tax, it could supplement it. And knowing Sacramento's track record with taxation, which scenario do you think is more likely? That they eliminate an existing tax or that they add a new tax on top of it? I'll let you answer that. Now let's get to the numbers that actually matter to you. The pilot program tested fee rates between 2.8 cents and 9 cents per mile. Let's use the average California driver as an example. The typical driver in this state travels about 15,000 miles per year. If you're charged 2.8 cents per mile, that's $420 per year. If you're charged 9 cents per mile, that's $1,350 per year. Most California households have 2 cars, so double those numbers. At the low end, you're looking at $840 annually for a 2-car household. At the high end, $2,700. Now add that to what you're already paying. The average California driver buys about 600 gallons of gas per year. At 68 cents per gallon in state gas tax, that's $408 per car in gas taxes. For a 2-car household, that's about $816 annually just in California state gas taxes. If mileage fees are added on top of that, you're looking at a combined burden of somewhere between $1,656 and $3,516 per year. That's for a household with 2 average drivers. If you drive more than average, maybe you have a long commute, or you travel for work, or you live in a rural area where everything is spread out, your costs go even higher. Let me put that in perspective. $3,000 per year is $250 per month. That's a car payment. That's a significant chunk of your grocery budget. That's a family vacation. And this doesn't even account for the indirect costs. Every business that operates vehicles will face the same mileage fees. Delivery companies, trucking companies, rideshare drivers, contractors, plumbers, electricians, all of those businesses will pass their increased costs onto you through higher prices for goods and services. When it costs more to transport products, those products cost more on the shelf. When it costs more for a plumber to drive to your house, you pay more for the service call. The ripple effect touches everyone, even people who don't own cars. But the financial burden isn't even the scariest part of this bill. The real concern is how the state plans to track your mileage. Because unlike the gas tax, which is collected at the pump and doesn't require knowing anything about individual drivers, a mileage-based fee requires the state to know exactly how many miles you personally drove. And that means tracking. The study funded by AB 1421 explores 3 primary methods. Option 1, GPS devices. During the pilot program, some participants installed plug-in GPS units in their cars that transmitted real-time location data to the state. These devices didn't just count miles. They recorded where you drove, when you drove, what routes you took, and how fast you were going. All of that data was uploaded to state servers. Now, the program claims the data is anonymized, and that location information isn't stored long-term. But think about what that really means. In order to bill you for mileage, the state has to tie your mileage total to your identity, your name, your vehicle registration, your address, so the data can't be truly anonymous. And once the technology exists to collect detailed location data, What stops future legislation from using that data for other purposes? Congestion pricing, where you pay more to drive during rush hour. Environmental zones, where you pay extra fees for driving in certain areas. Speed-based penalties, where your mileage fee increases if you drive over the limit. The technology enables all of that. Option 2, event data recorders. These are the black boxes built into your car. If you own a vehicle manufactured after 2014, there's a 96% chance it has one of these devices. They're already in there, recording information about your driving, hard braking, acceleration, speed, airbag deployment. This data is used by manufacturers for diagnostics and by insurance companies after accidents. The mileage fee study examines whether the state could simply access these existing devices and pull odometer readings directly from your car's computer. No new hardware required, just legal authority to tap into data your car is already collecting. Option 3, smog check odometer readings. Every 2 years, California requires most vehicles to get a smog check. During that check, the mechanic records your odometer reading. The state already has this data in a database. The mileage fee study looks at whether they could use those odometer readings to calculate how many miles you drove between smog checks and bill you accordingly. This is the lowest tech option and the one with the fewest privacy concerns, but it's also the least precise and the hardest to enforce. Someone could disconnect their odometer, and someone could get their smog check done out of state. It's easier to cheat. So which method will they choose? Probably a combination. High-tech tracking for most drivers with odometer readings as a backup. And here's what should really concern you. Your car is already collecting most of this data right now, whether you know it or not. Event data recorders are standard equipment. Many new cars have built-in GPS for navigation and emergency services. Satellite radio systems know your location. Vehicle diagnostics transmit data to manufacturers. Your car is already a rolling surveillance device. A B-1421 just gives the state permission to use that surveillance for taxation. And once that door's open, it never closes. Think about how other technologies evolved. Red light cameras were supposed to only catch people running red lights. Now they're used for speed enforcement, toll collection, and tracking vehicles across entire cities. Automatic license plate readers were supposed to help find stolen cars. Now they're used to build databases of everyone's movements. The problem with surveillance technology isn't just what it's used for today. It's what it can be used for tomorrow, once the legal framework exists and the public has accepted it as normal. Now, AB 1421 doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's part of a broader trend of mileage-based fees creeping into California policy at multiple levels. Let me tell you about AB 130. This is a bill that passed back in 2021, and most people have never heard of it. AB 130 allows local governments to charge vehicle miles traveled fees on new housing developments. When a developer wants to build an apartment complex or a subdivision, the city can impose a fee based on how much additional driving that housing project will generate. The fees are supposed to mitigate the environmental impact of increased vehicle trips. But here's what actually happens. Developers pass those fees on to buyers or renters. The fees can reach up to $16,200 per housing unit. In some jurisdictions, the total cost over 20 years can hit $324,000 per unit. Housing advocates estimate this could increase rents by 48% in high-cost areas. That translates to an extra $1,350 per month for some renters. Think about the political strategy here. A B-130 tests mileage-based fees at the local level on new construction. A B-1421 studies mileage-based fees at the state level on all drivers. They're building the same system from two different angles, and they're framing both as solutions to progressive policy goals. A B-130 is sold as environmental protection, reducing sprawl and car dependency. A B-1421 is sold as tax fairness, making sure electric vehicle owners pay for roads too. By wrapping these fees in climate and equity language, Sacramento makes opposition look anti-environmental or anti-fairness. It's political framing designed to shut down debate. And who's pushing this? Let's follow the money. The Service Employees International Union, SEIU, has been one of the most vocal supporters of both billionaire wealth taxes and transportation funding measures. Public campaign finance records show SEIU contributions to legislators who voted yes on AB 1421. The union argues that California needs more revenue for public services and infrastructure, and they're not wrong about the infrastructure needs. California's roads are in terrible shape. But here's the contradiction. SEIU simultaneously pushes for massive taxes on billionaires while supporting taxes that hit working-class drivers the hardest. Mileage fees are regressive. That means they take a bigger bite out of lower-income families than wealthy families. If you're rich and you live in San Francisco, you might drive 5,000 miles per year because everything you need is nearby and you can afford to live close to work. If you're working class and you live in the Central Valley, you might drive 30,000 miles per year because you commute 2 hours each way to a job in the Bay Area where you can't afford rent. The mileage fee punishes the long-distance commuter. It punishes the rural resident. It punishes the person who can't afford to live near their job. And it does nothing to the wealthy urbanite who already drives less. But SEIU can sell this to their members by pointing at billionaires. Look, we tried to tax the rich, but they're leaving the state. Elon Musk moved to Texas. Hedge fund managers are relocating to Florida. We need revenue from somewhere, so everyone has to contribute. It's a classic bait and switch. Propose a politically popular tax on people everyone resents. When those people leave, use their departure as justification for taxing everyone else. And it works because most voters don't pay attention to the details. They just hear tax the rich and assume someone else is paying. But here's the good news, and this is important. Public opposition can stop this. We've seen it happen. In 2023, the San Diego Association of Governments, SANDAG, proposed a regional mileage fee, 3 to 5 cents per mile for drivers in San Diego County. The proposal went through the normal planning process, staff reports, public hearings, all the usual bureaucratic steps, and then the public showed up. Hundreds of people flooded community meetings. They called their representatives. They wrote letters. They organized on social media. Local news covered the backlash extensively. And when Sandig finally voted on the proposal, it was rejected 15-4. 15-4. That's not a close vote. That's a landslide. The public pressure worked. Politicians saw that supporting the mileage fee would cost them their seats, so they voted it down. But here's the catch. San Diego rejected a local mileage fee and Sacramento ignored them and kept advancing AB 1421 anyway. The state doesn't care what local governments want if it conflicts with state revenue needs. That's the pattern you need to understand. Local governments are somewhat responsive to voter pressure because local politicians are closer to the people. They see you at the grocery store. Their kids go to school with your kids. They feel the heat directly. State legislators are more insulated. They represent hundreds of thousands of people. They raise money from statewide interest groups. They can afford to ignore individual constituents as long as the big donors and unions are happy. So stopping AB 1421 requires targeting the right pressure points. And that's what I want to talk about now because the bill is sitting in the Senate Rules Committee as of February 9th, 2026, and the next few weeks are critical. The Senate Rules Committee decides which bills get assigned to which policy committees for hearings. A B 1421 will almost certainly be assigned to the Senate Appropriations Committee because it involves state spending and potential revenue. The chair of Senate Appropriations is Senator Sabrina Cervantes. Her office number is 951-680-6750. She controls the calendar. She decides which bills get hearings and which bills die in committee. If enough constituents call her office and make it clear that AB 1421 is a political liability, she can simply refuse to schedule a hearing. The bill never gets a vote. It dies quietly. Another key player is Senator Melissa Hurtado. She represents a swing district in the Central Valley and won her last election by a very narrow margin. She's vulnerable. She knows it. Her constituents are exactly the kind of working-class long-distance commuters who would be hammered by mileage fees. Her office number is 661-395-2620. She needs to hear from voters that this bill is a deal breaker. And then there's Senator Dave Cortese. He chairs the Labor Committee and has close ties to the unions that are pushing for more transportation revenue. His number is 408-723-4154. He's less likely to flip, but public pressure still matters. If his constituents flood his office with calls, it creates political cover for him to oppose the bill even if his union allies want it. Here's what you say when you call. Keep it short and direct. I'm calling about AB 1421. I oppose this bill because it would increase costs for my family and invade my privacy through vehicle tracking. I'm watching how my senator votes on this, and I will remember in the next election. That's it. You don't need a long speech, you don't need to debate policy, you just need to make it clear that this bill has political consequences and timing matters. Right now, the bill is in Rules Committee. Once it gets assigned to Appropriations, there will be a public hearing scheduled. That hearing is your moment. You can submit written testimony. You can attend in person or virtually. You can make your voice heard when it actually counts. The committee vote happens shortly after the hearing. If the bill passes committee, it goes to the full Senate floor for a final vote. That floor vote is the last chance to stop it before it becomes law. And that's where the math gets tricky. California's Senate has a Democratic supermajority. They can pass bills without a single Republican vote. So this isn't a partisan issue you can rely on party opposition to stop. This is a public pressure issue. Democrats have to believe that voting yes will cost them their seats. And the only way they believe that is if their phones are ringing off the hook and their inboxes are flooded with angry messages from constituents. Now let's talk about what happens if the bill passes. The committee delivers its report by January 1st, 2027. That report will include detailed recommendations for implementing a mileage-based fee system, fee rates, technology standards, revenue projections, equity considerations, everything a legislator needs to introduce the actual tax bill. And sometime in 2027 or 2028, that bill will be introduced. At that point, the debate won't be about whether to study mileage fees. It will be about whether to implement the recommendations from the study. And Sacramento will argue that the study was thorough, the technology was tested, the public had input during the pilot program, and now it's time to move forward. The infrastructure will already exist. The legal framework will already be drafted. All they need is the vote. And here's the political timing to watch. If gas prices spike in spring or summer of 2026, maybe because of refinery shutdowns, maybe because of tensions in the Middle East, maybe because of California's unique fuel blend requirements, public anger at high gas prices could actually help mileage fee proponents. They'll argue that mileage fees are more predictable and fair than gas taxes that fluctuate with global oil markets. They'll point to families struggling to afford gas and say, we need a better system. Conversely, if gas prices drop, the urgency for changing the system disappears. People tolerate the gas tax more when gas is cheap. So the political calculation is this: Sacramento wants to pass the mileage fee during a moment when the public is already frustrated with transportation costs, but before they realize the mileage fee will make things worse, not better. That's the window. And based on legislative calendars and the 2027 report deadline, that window is probably late 2027 or early 2028, which gives us time. Time to organize opposition, time to educate voters, time to pressure legislators, but only if people actually pay attention. And that's the challenge, because most Californians won't hear about this bill until it's too late. Mainstream media doesn't cover committee votes. They cover floor votes and governor's signatures. By the time this hits the news, the outcome is already decided. That's why I make these videos, because someone needs to track the bills that don't make headlines until they're already law. Someone needs to read the legislative text and the fiscal analyses and explain what they actually mean in plain language. Someone needs to connect the dots between AB 1421 and AB 130 and the San Diego mileage fee proposal and show you the pattern. This isn't about conspiracy theories. This is about reading public documents and understanding how policy gets made. Everything I've told you in this video is based on official bill text, legislative analyses, pilot program reports, and public records. It's all out there. Most people just don't have time to read through hundreds of pages of government documents. That's what this channel does. We read the boring stuff so you don't have to, and we explain what it means for your life. So here's the bottom line. A B 1421 passed the California Assembly on January 29, 2026. It's currently sitting in the Senate Rules Committee. Within the next 2 to 4 weeks, it will be assigned to a policy committee, most likely Appropriations. That committee will schedule a hearing. After the hearing, there will be a committee vote. If it passes committee, it goes to the full Senate floor. If it passes the Senate, it becomes law, and the study continues through 2035 with a report due January 1st, 2027. That report will be the blueprint for implementing actual mileage fees, probably sometime in 2027 or 2028. Those fees could cost the average two-car California household between $840 and $2,700 per year, on top of existing gas taxes. The fees will require tracking your vehicle's mileage through GPS, black box computers, or odometer readings, which creates serious privacy concerns about government surveillance of your movements. This is part of a broader pattern of mileage-based fees being implemented at both state and local levels, often wrapped in environmental or equity language to make opposition seem unreasonable. The unions and interest groups pushing these policies claim to support taxing billionaires, but consistently back taxes that hit working families hardest. And while public opposition can work, as San Diego proved in 2023, it requires organized pressure on the right decision makers at the right time. The decision makers right now are the senators I mentioned earlier: Sabrina Cervantes, Melissa Hurtado, Dave Cortese. Their contact information is in the description below. The next 30 days are when your calls matter most, before the bill gets assigned and the legislative process accelerates. I'll be tracking this bill every step of the way. When it gets assigned to committee, I'll post an update. When the hearing is scheduled, I'll let you know. When the vote happens, I'll tell you how your senator voted. This is ongoing coverage, not a one-time story. Subscribe if you want to stay informed, because the California legislature moves fast, and most people don't find out what happened until months later when the policies start affecting their lives. And look, I know calling your senator feels pointless sometimes. I know it seems like they don't listen, and they're going to do whatever they want anyway. But here's the thing, they track those calls. Every legislative office has staff whose job is to tally constituent contacts and report them to the senator. When a bill generates 10 calls, they ignore it. When a bill generates 100 calls, they notice. When a bill generates 1,000 calls, they panic. Numbers matter. Your individual call might not change a vote by itself, but your call plus everyone else watching this video adds up to real political pressure. And even if we don't stop AB 1421, even if it passes and the study continues, the fight isn't over, because the study is just the study. The actual tax still requires a separate bill and a 2/3 vote. That's the next battle. But we can't win the next battle if we don't fight this one. We can't organize opposition to the tax if we let the study happen without any pushback. Every stage matters. So make the calls, share this video with other California drivers who need to know what's coming. Check the description for links to the bill text, the senator contact info, and the official legislative tracking page. And come back for the updates, because this story is just getting started. A B 1421 is a threat to your budget and your privacy. It's being advanced by politicians who think you're not paying attention. Prove them wrong.